So, for all of you that don't know Scotch and Watch, I have to give you a quick setup for what it is. So, I had an AI company for a while, and then I sold it, right? And then I suffered from something that was like extreme relevance deprivation. No one rang, no emails, no one wanted to know me, right? So suddenly it was like I was a bit lost. So Joe and I got to know each other, wasn't it? Back in the day. And so what happened was that a small group of media CEOs that I'd been working with that were friends started to ring me from America, and they always rang at 10:30 at night, and I'd have a scotch in my hand, and my wife, long-suffering wife Liz, would be sat next to me trying to watch Bridgerton on the television. And so I'd be drinking whiskey and chatting away to someone about something, and she's like, can you just shut up, right? And so it happened a lot. So eventually I said to these guys that were ringing, look, I'm going to write down the answers to your questions in a Substack, okay? And I'm going to call it Scotch and Watch, because I'm drinking scotch, she's trying to watch, and you guys keep ringing. So that's what we're going to do. And then I left it, and I thought nothing about it, and it now has 15,000 subscribers. I've never spent $1 on marketing, and the whole thing's just exploded, and it's led to all of these, and I speak like this all over the world now. So this whole conversation about the future of media is a conversation that's the same on every continent. The problem we have is the same on every continent. The solutions are often the same. So it's a kind of like a fight club for journalism. It's an opportunity for us to get in the fight and start to build our industry, because God, we fucking love it, and we should fight for it. So that's what Scotch and Watch is. All right? Make sense? It's unscripted, you might have picked up on that already. It's just, let's talk about this stuff and get it out in the open. Now, for me, this is a personal pleasure, because I'm going to get to sit and talk to, well, actually, you explain. What did you do?
Yeah, sure.
So Stephanie Laser, everybody.
Hi.
There you go. See?
It is nice to meet you all. For those of you that don't know me, I am a long-standing, I've always loved publishers. I started working at publishers right out of college. I worked at the New York Post. It was my first job in advertising. I consulted for probably 70 to 80 different publishers during kind of the onset of programmatic and header bidding and times like that. I landed myself at News Corp, where I worked for about 5 years. I am now at AWS. I've been at AWS for about 3 years, serving our publishers as customers. And I will mention that through my time at News Corp, I had a lot of experience throughout my career using Google Ad Manager, how it functioned, how it decisioned, how it worked. A lot of the decisioning mechanisms were non-transparent. A lot of the data that came out of it was also non-transparent, and this was very frustrating for me on a lot of different levels. And some of the folks in this room are very familiar with my queries, my meetings, my conversations that I had with Google over that time period. And when the Department of Justice called in and asked if I was willing to testify after Amazon said, yeah, go for it, and News Corp was able to foot the bill for me, then I testified on behalf of my experience using GAM in front of the court in the antitrust trial for ad tech against Google, and they lost. That was nice.
Did they lose? They lost.
Yeah.
Yes, they did.
So I was one of a handful of fact witnesses, probably I think like maybe 12, and I was the only female.
Were you?
Yeah, fun fact.
That counts as heroin, right? So it takes a lot of courage to do that, right? I don't know how many of us would decide to jump up there and do that job. I loved your evidence. I believe you might have used the phrase that you were being held hostage by Google. Do you want to just talk a little bit about that? Because that stuck.
Yeah. So, my frustration always with Google Ad Manager was that it didn't really work in a matter that I needed it to continue to innovate in our businesses and help our business units to innovate. So, one of the things you couldn't get out of it was you couldn't get real-time pricing. So one of the cool things about programmatic advertising was that advertisers, they can optimize in real time. And no matter how many times I asked, Google would refuse to give me real-time pricing despite the fact that they could act on real-time pricing at any point in time. There was also access to our log level data. So, there was AdX logs, there were DFP logs, right? Even though they were saying it was Google Ad Manager, it was one system. There were still two different log sets that would come off of it. and you couldn't marry them together. So you couldn't actually get a 360-degree view of what was happening in the decisioning logic of AdX against all of the ad serving. And then another thing is that, every time we queried or asked or pushed, it was always this sort of like kind of gaslighting that would happen, where it was like you're asking too much, or you're asking something that's technically not feasible, not available. And we were stuck. Like, we were so heavily dependent from the years of being on Google Ad Manager and from all the product features that they kept saying, oh yeah, these are for you. It was chipping away at control. It was chipping away at our direct sales motions, and it was chipping away at our ability to run our advertising businesses. And it wasn't just us, right? I had, 70 to 80 different publishers who I was looking at their ad stack, and I was looking at it, and I was very frustrated. And so it was cathartic to be able to stand in front of there and talk about it. It was also, that's what I felt like.
Cathartic, yeah. How many years of frustration have we all felt? And then you get the opportunity to get up there and drop a bomb in front of the DOJ and in front of the judge. Amazing. And when you complained to Google, this was the other piece of your evidence that really stuck with me. When you complained to Google and you said, I'm really unhappy, I would like to see this data, I want to be able to manage my products with the way you're promising me that I'm supposed to manage it, what did they say to you?
They told me I was emotional and unproductive. I think Yifang might have been in on that meeting. There was definitely a few folks at News Corp who was in on that meeting, and I kind of sat back, and it's so when you're a woman in technology and someone accuses you of that, you initially start to doubt yourself, right? You initially start to be like, am I, right? And so I stepped back, and I actually talked to one of our executives at Dow Jones, and he just looked at me and he was like, Steph, they're trying to get in your head. He was like, you're asking for something, you're passionate about what you're asking for, you're directly asking for it, they can't give it to you because they don't want to give it to you, and you need to just keep pushing, don't doubt yourself for a minute. And that's what I kept doing. Yeah.
All right. Interesting, right? So I represent the kind of other side, the flip side of the coin of that. So I'm an investigative reporter, right? So worked for News Corp for years and years and years. I've been to jail multiple times. I've been kidnapped and held for ransom. I went to jail in Cuba for 8 years. I didn't actually spend 8 years. I was deported, but I was sentenced to 8 years. So I know how important journalism is, okay, and you're my tribe. And when I sit and I hear this, okay, and our industry is being eaten alive by what's clearly a monopolist, 91.75% market share, correct? Okay, then it's clearly a monopolist by any measure. But when you're then saying to your customers, I'm not going to give you the data you want, and when you ask, you're emotional, we've reached the end game of that, okay? And so how many of you have followed the antitrust trials, and how many, like closely, and read the evidence, and just felt every single time that thing they've just, look at the nods. Every time they say something, you just go, yeah, that happened to me. Yeah, that happened to me. Yeah, that. And we have Stockholm syndrome as an industry, okay? And we've kind of got used to this. It's been a boiling frog, getting increasingly worse and worse and worse until our business really struggles to survive. And this is our opportunity to go, do you know what? We've had 3 antitrust trials. We talk a lot about 2 of them, but there's been 3. The first one was about the app stores, and they lost, okay? So everybody forgets that one, right? But the interesting thing, my favorite line, I drop it on stage with Google all the time and they hate it, is that, they said they'd have a jury for that one. Yep. You could choose to have a jury or not. So they chose to have a jury. They had the jury because they were so utterly convinced that the world loved them that the jury would never convict them. Never convict them. The jury went for lunch, okay, and came back with a unanimous verdict 45 minutes later. An hour and 45 minutes, including lunch, unanimous guilty verdict. That lit a fire. That changed everything in Google. The lawyers totally misread the room. Yeah? So then we have the second trial, which is the search antitrust trial. And you've got to decide if you're going to figure out whether Google is a monopoly in search. Now, the numbers clearly show that that's true. But is it a monopoly we're all willing to accept and just live with because it's actually quite a good product? Is that okay? And this was a test of whether or not the law passes beyond just whether it works and whether we need something else, because this whole court case was to prove that we needed competition in the market. Not that it might be a good product. And Google kept saying in court again and again and again, you might have heard this, again and again and again, they said, we're the best search engine in the world. And the judge and the DOJ repeatedly said, well, we don't know that, do we? Because we haven't seen another one. Yeah, and I think that's another really important thing to remember, right? Is it's an easy thing to say as an incumbent, but it might not be true. And then when they won that case, then Google's now on the back foot. And then after winning the App Store and winning the search case, the DOJ went for the money. And this is the thing Google's most frightened about. And so are we going to break down the ad tech? Are we going to break down GAM? Are we going to break down AdX? Are we going to break down the analytics? Are we going to break down all of these things? Yeah. Are we going to not be able to hide the numbers from you? Are we actually going to make GAM do what it's supposed to do? And they've lost that one too. And the DOJ's line was beautiful, so I don't know if you guys sing, and let's not do it right now, but it literally just got up and said, Google is once, twice, three times a monopolist, right? And that line, I publish it every day, right? It's poetic. So we have an opportunity now that we're at the end of 3 cases with 3 judges, with 3 guilty verdicts under 2 different presidents and 2 regimes of the DOJ, okay? And they've lost all of them, clean sweep. Did you think that was going to happen?
I mean, I deeply hoped and wished that, like the ad tech trial would, like, people would be like, oh, see, they lost in search, and I was like, I don't care. That is not the thing that I think about. It's not the thing that I could affect. It's not the thing that I could help with. The ad tech trial is what really meant to me because like you mentioned, like the money. Right? This is how publishers make money. This is how we pay journalists. This is how we delight our customers. This is how we, keep the open web vibrant. This is how we combat misinformation. This is how we do all of these things. It's the money has to fund those things. And they did such a great job of completely commoditizing everybody's content to the point that misinformation monetized exactly the same way as the Wall Street Journal, or making sure that it was basically completely focused on the advertiser and not ever focused on the person that they were selling to, which was Google Ad Manager. And so, from my perspective, I couldn't be more delighted that the thing I instinctually knew happened. And I also was very vindicated by the discovery exercise. I thought the discovery exercise at the DOJ was very interesting. And you have to go deep into like some dorky ad tech trades if you really want to get like the full scope of all of the like private projects, Bernanke, Global Bernanke, like all of these different ones where they really just manipulated a marketplace over a period of time to move dollars to folks who were in Google's good graces, right? And that is, that is not good for independent journalism.
Oh, it's not been great. I don't know if anybody else has noticed. No. And so Matthew Wheatland also gave evidence from the Daily Mail. He couldn't make it tonight, sadly. I saw him yesterday. He basically said in his evidence, he was up just after you, wasn't he?
Yes.
And he just basically got up and just said, you've silenced our journalism. Yeah. I mean, people have been to war for silencing journalism. We all know this. We're in the industry because we believe in it. And yet we'd seen a commercial company take the business to the floor. And so one of the things that I'm trying to do with my podcast, with Scotch and Watch and the other stuff that I do, is to kind of permission the industry to be outraged and angry. We've kind of been sucked into this vortex of acceptance that isn't actually real. It's wrong. I was on stage with, imagine this, it almost brings a tear to my eye, to be honest. I was with about 350 local publishers in Canada, and I'd done the presentation, everything was great. And the first question from the guy that got up, local paper, he just said, what did we do wrong? And I said, you didn't do anything wrong. Something wrong was done to you, right? You're reporting the news. You're trying to tell people the news. You're going out of your way to tell a story about this, and you're the victim, okay? And so we're allowed to be angry. We're allowed to be ragey. And what we're about to see is the lights get switched on again.
things have changed significantly. AI has changed the way that advertising works. AI has changed the way in which consumers come to, our properties. So it's a matter of being able to shift power, right? Everybody's always going to need to serve ads. Everybody's always going to monetize attention. It's a need to be able to make sure that the power is distributed, that you reinvigorate competition, and that innovation actually returns into this area. Because I said it in my testimony, like, DFP is a slow, clunky piece of technology. It takes a very long time.
They absolutely love that.
It takes a long time to load,
yeah.
Right? And if you look at the best product experiences that exist out in the marketplace today, they're typically companies that build their own ad platforms, right? Because they can co-locate their infrastructure to their already existing content, because they can optimize towards the product experience, because they have the interoperability of being able to modify any and all of the technology in order to best suit the consumer's needs. And that is not something that GAM ever really allowed for, or DFP ever really allowed for. It is a piece of technology from 25 years ago. And so the idea of us being able to change the way we see advertising and change the way in which consumers consume it on our properties, that's, I think, really important, and also something that we'll be able to change.
So I think a lot about this. I speak to publishers, as I mentioned earlier on, all over the world. And you've got a very, very, very complicated, interconnected global industry with multiple different facets and complicating factors and competition and everything else. It's very, very complicated, but it really does bake down to three things, right? It bakes down to the discovery of your content, the distribution of your content, and the monetization of your content. Those are the three things. If you can succeed at two of those, you've got a reasonable business. You could succeed at all three, you're doing great. Systematically, if you look at the way the publishing industry has behaved, and I'm happy to be challenged by this on this stuff, okay? But if you have a look at how our industry behaved, and I was in the first meetings with Google at News Corp, when I was at News Corp in the late 90s, yeah, we traded traffic for content because we wanted to get more traffic, because that's awesome. I love this place. This place is great. I'm going to put it in this glass. Yeah, there we go.
Should I be shifting to my
you
wise
absolutely
line?
should.
My
You're off
wise
brand.
line glass? Okay,
you're
I'm off brand.
You're off brand.
Off
brand. So I was there in the meetings, and the meetings was, look, we've got this fantastic search engine. We could see it exploding. And we traded page views because we were in the advertising business, and we thought page views equaled money because we were great at selling stuff. We never expected them to enter the ad market, okay? And then they did, right? So you lost discovery, you lost distribution, you lost monetization.
Yeah, I had been talking to someone a few weeks ago that was like, publishers' original sin was not asking to be compensated for
every view. Pay as you go. That was what we should have done.
Because when you think about most of their products, it is built on the back of content produced by other people.
Yep.
Right? So you look at search, and they need publishers for that. You look at YouTube, right? Creators, the creator economy. It's always content that's built on the backs of other people, and then it is, it is whatever we've decided to give you.
Yeah. So tell me if this isn't true, okay? And like I said, I'm always trying to boil this down to something that's really, really simple to argue. So I used to be a paper boy. Did anybody else ever? You're all too young. Thank you. Thanks for saving me from my embarrassment there, right? So I used to get paid virtually nothing to deliver a newspaper to people, right? Yeah? But what's happened here is that the paper boy has become the trillionaire. How the fuck has that happened, right? All they do is they take our content and deliver it to other people, and they keep all the money, and somehow we lost control over our product, okay? And it was very clever and very systematic. And one of the things that I found fascinating about the antitrust trial was that we got to have a look inside the machine that pulled that off. You could see the emails were just brutal and deliberate and targeted and cynical and utterly uncaring about us. And I'm trying to fire you up because we should be ragey, right? It's baseball bat time, right? And so when you saw all that out in the open, all those things you suspected were true and that you kind of thought were happening, but you kind of put it in the back burner, were all true, okay? And if you actually read the evidence, it's horrific. That is done, and the past, and they're once, twice, three times a monopolist, and it's over. And so it's important to then draw a line under what's past, okay? Because now we've won the war, and now we have to win the peace. And we get an opportunity to go again, right? Now, I don't know about you, I can't fucking wait. I can't wait to get back into building things again. I can't wait to get back to seeing 15% quarter-on-quarter growth. I can't wait to see money flowing. Now, we've all forgotten what that feels like, right? But if you break the monopoly, right, then suddenly that all comes back into play. And so lots of people think, and correct me if you want to take a different view, but lots of people are confused by why Google's being broken up. Why is this happening? The DOJ's been clear as a bell. It is, this company's a monopoly, it's halting innovation, cool new things that should have happened aren't happening, and we need to free the money so other people can have the courage to build things. If your companies, your media companies, this is actually a question, if your company suddenly had $20 billion a year of more revenue, okay, yeah, right? That's not even a sniff. Google's doing $1 billion a day, okay? $20 billion, that's a small ask. If that came back to our industry, can we stand it back up? Have we got the energy to stand it back up?
So one of the things that, I heard from a publisher over the course of the last few weeks, it was after the search loss, but before the ad tech loss, was this idea.
By the way, let's go with win, because we won.
Yeah.
They lost, we won.
Yeah. The idea that Chrome could be bought by a consortium of publishers.
Hell yes.
And guys, can I admit what happened? We're at lunch, he tells me, I might do it now. And I just start to cry. I start to tear up because I think to myself, I'm like, it was always us. It was always our content. We were always driving the eyeballs. We were always producing the thing that made Chrome powerful. Right?
Yeah.
And so the idea of being able to pull together and have control over the distribution means that were taken from us was very attractive. And then now if I was to apply that same thing to Google Ad Manager, you have a conversation with somebody about ad decisioning. What is ad decisioning supposed to do? And my favorite is when you talk to somebody who's like an ad tech purist, and they were like, an ad server maximizes yield. And I'm like, no, the ad server does whatever the fuck the publisher wants it to do for an ad.
You're getting the hang of this. You're dropping the F-bomb. She's getting the hang of it. This is how it works.
So it's because when you think about it, it's like, okay, does it maximize yield on the actual individual impression? And you're like, maybe not, right? Maybe it maximizes yield towards the advertiser that you have the longest overall lifetime value with, right? That does the biggest deals for you, and maybe they get prioritized.
Maybe you trade a negotiation.
Right? Maybe you trade a negotiation.
Yep.
Maybe it's not an ad at all, right? We talk a lot about personalization. Personalization is huge right now. Maybe it's not an ad. Maybe you realize that you can actually maximize lifetime customer value if you, if you serve a piece of content, right? If you have a login experience so that you can continue to offer somebody via emails, right? There's just a whole laundry list of ways in which when ad serving cracks open and we start to innovate around it, different ways in which you
The world's your oyster.
Yeah, different ways in which
So imagine this. So I'm a big believer in the news industry taking over Chrome. So you guys need to just suspend disbelief for a moment and just imagine that this can happen. So let's talk about Chrome, all right? So Chrome is the browser, it's Google's browser. It doesn't get talked about much because it's supposedly a not-for-profit product, but it's the keystone of the arch of the entire Google business, okay? It collects massive amount of data. 66% of all global web traffic passes through Chrome, all right? like we look at page views and I'm trying to go up 3%, I'm trying to go down 3%. 17 trillion page views is not a problem. You know, you can manage that, right? That is a significant business. And so if you controlled Chrome as the publishing industry, you can decide what the homepage of Chrome is. It's no longer a search bar that just drives traffic to Google, which is what they built it for. It might now have a share of voice or a must share content page, right? It might be a page that has a single subscription for every publisher on the planet for $9.99, and we can have a Netflix for news and everybody shares in the upside. 4.3 billion people a day use Chrome, right? Imagine what you can do if you take back, I mentioned earlier on, discovery, that's the paperboy thing. This is the distribution bit, right? If you've got distribution to 4.3 billion people and you control it as an industry, what can we do with that? You were going to say.
I mean, when I think about what the future of Chrome for publishers could be, I think a lot about multimodal content. I think a lot about the idea of, if everybody shares an understanding of the best way that a consumer likes to consume content, being able to be flexible and have the information to meet a consumer where they want, right? And if that information is somehow a community asset, right? And is somehow
a utility,
right? That delivers us a chance to actually be able to concentrate on what we do best, right? Which is create unique content, create things that keep folks engaged, and then also use technology to meet them where they are in terms of how they like to be spoken to. Do they like audio? Do they like video? Do they like, do they like reading? Do they like a more of an interactive experience, a gaming experience, et cetera? Like, once that understanding becomes a community asset, we start to actually create a lot better experiences for consumers.
Which is ironically what we had before Google. Okay, so we're just going back to what existed before. Now, some of us were around before Google, yeah? Or we were around when Google first turned up and started to grow. And now it's kind of become a belief that Google has to exist. It doesn't have a God-given right to exist. I think that we as publishers at the time, we'd had a 25-year monopoly, yeah? And we believed we had a God-given right to exist, and then it ended. And I think that Google's about to learn that same thing. It's been about 25 years. It's probably at the end of its run. We're now at the start of the AI run, okay? So I'm sure all of you read everything and follow everything around AI. I'm sure some of you in the room have done deals with AI companies to license your content, right? But we now have to build this AI future, and Google's not going to get to build it, right? Which means there's a gap. And so premium content is going to have to train it, right? And that's us. And if we have Chrome and we control Chrome, then we can put all the content from all the premium publishers in the world into Chrome, and we can build our own AI. We can king make an AI by putting all our content in it, and we can build the future of AI. AI will only achieve mass adoption when people trust it. It needs people to use it. And at the moment, people don't trust it, so therefore it's having a stuttering start. Even though it's growing fast, it's still not growing at the pace it should be growing, given its capacity. So we as an industry, if we can take Chrome, we have options. We have options on monetization, as Stephanie's just been saying, discovery, the future of AI, delivery, all of it. So I'm looking around, there's some nods, and you're worried. I can see your worried face. And like some people are just like, no, this is like heathen talk. This is crazy. This is never ever going to happen, right? But if we want to own the future of our industry, doesn't it have to happen? Doesn't it? Or are we just going to hand it off to OpenAI and let them have a go for the next 25 years?
Let's do a poll. Who's a publisher in the room? Raise your hand if you're at a publisher. But if you create content not at a traditional publisher, any content creator people. There you go. Well, what? No, that's cool. I think that's interesting. I mean, it's like, who's thinking of things like this? Like, if the Web 2.0 is dead, Web 3, whatever that means, is here, what do we do?
I actually think it's Web 2.0. So I think that Web 1.0 was us, yeah. Web 1.1 was Google stealing all our stuff, Web 2.0 is the AI one. So everybody wants to claim Web 2.0. I think some people are also claiming Web 3.0, right? But they're not really, right? The difference between from print to digital is the same as from digital to AI, right? So I think we're at Web 2.0 personally. But who do we want to be in charge? So there was an article. Is anybody here from Bloomberg? So I keep getting a number quoted back to me all the by the way, congratulations. You going again?
Yeah.
Great job.
So did you.
No, I did 20 minutes ago. Come on, hurry up.
All right.
So there's this number that keeps popping up. People say to me, yeah, but we'd love to buy Chrome, says publisher X that I'm at. We'd love to buy it, but it's $20 billion. And I go, where's that $20 billion number from? And they're like, oh, I don't know, somebody mentioned it. It's from Bloomberg. So there was an article in Bloomberg that said the cost of to buy Chrome would be $20 billion, right? I rang the reporter. They were like, well, it's 3 minutes to deadline. Let's pick the number.
No.
Yeah. Oh. So our entire industry hangs on a 30-second decision made before lunch. Fuck that. Like, seriously, no. Let's be a bit smarter. So here's the thing. Why is the DOJ, we talked about this earlier on. Why is the DOJ picked a fight with an American company that represents American exceptionalism? Why have they done it? They've done it to create competition. They've also done it because Google's a great company and it makes a ton of money, but it's only growing at kind of 12, 13% year on year, right? And OpenAI is growing at 400% year on year. So if you're an investor, you want your money out of Google and you want it over there, right? You're nodding, right? And you want to get your money from here. You want to get it to there. You want to be in the next rocket ship, yeah? Not the next sedan, right? And they're now a sedan company. Big money, but they're IBM in waiting, right? And that is kind of the story. So everybody wants to be in AI and in hyper growth. So then you go, okay, well, it's not going to cost $20 billion to buy it. What does it cost? If you talk to the DOJ says nothing. It costs nothing because it's not their objective to return capital to Google or Google's shareholders because it's a profit of crime. What they want is to open and crack open competition. So they then have to look at who is the best custodian for the next generation of Chrome to enable competition to happen. So where do they go? There's been a conga line of applications. We've seen all of the AI companies line up, right? OpenAI will have a go, Yahoo's having a go, we'll have a go, everybody's having a go. It's never going there because it just creates a new monopoly, which is the opposite of what's been trying to be solved. So that's not going to happen, right? Then it's a conversation about private equity. Private equity will buy it. That's not going to spawn competition. That's going to spawn profiteering. So it's not going to go there. Then the governments, the French government has approached to buy it. Yeah? You guys don't know this, but I'm just telling you. So they want to buy it. They want to buy it because they want to create national webs, a splinternet. We want control of all of French web traffic so we can create .fr and self-preference French businesses. Denmark has also had a look at it. We don't want a splinternet, right? We want a global web. That's the World Wide Web. We want an open web. We want Web 2.0, open Web 2.0. So if it's not the AI companies, and if it's not the governments, okay, and if it's not private equity, do you know who's in fourth place? It's us. It's actually our job, actually, to pick this up because it was ours, and now we need to take it back, which takes courage, but it doesn't take $20 billion. It takes $0. It just takes the courage to say yes. If you want to take one thing away tonight, it's that all the problems you've had for the last 20 years can end if you say yes. Right? And we just have to figure out how to do it.
What's the consortium that would take on a publisher Chrome?
We'd create it. This is the nexus of that in the room, right? That's the point. Like, you're Paramount, right? Who else? Shout out where you're from, one by one. Paramount, what other multi-billion-dollar market cap businesses have we got in the room? AWS, right? Yeah, okay. Canva. Yeah, don't be shy. Who else? Over here, Realtor. Yeah, you're a big company, right? Yeah, yeah. I'm going to keep picking you out. Yeah. You guys better volunteer, or I'm going to start calling you out, right? That's why I talk to you all nicely out there, is so I know who you are, right?
Real estate news.
Right. So between us, we have more than the capacity to run it. Do you know one thing that's enraged me more than I can possibly put into words? I'm going to try though. Is that every single time I see another one of these tech wankers step up and go, you know what? We're not the arbiter of content. I'm like, are you fuck? Like, that's your job, right? If you're in charge, then you're in charge. But if you don't have the courage to be the editor, don't be an editor. I've been an editor, and many of you have been an editor. It comes with a responsibility. It means that you step up to have the courage to be responsible for what you do. And if you get it wrong, you go to jail. I've been to jail twice. And I'm proud of it because I did it to protect sources. Right? That's what we're for. And so we should have the courage to step up and be an arbiter of the content, and I think we're the right custodians.
Yeah, I was just thinking that, like, from an ad tech perspective, there's definitely organizations that could take on a GAM, right? That are like industry-run organizations. My question is, like, is there an equivalent from a distribution perspective of an organization who could take on ownership and then like figure out how to operate? I'm just already moving on into, okay, how do we do this?
I haven't talked to you yet, right? Steph, I haven't talked to you about this yet, but I'm going to look after the newspaper side and the content side. You're going to have to look after the ad sales side.
Okay,
that's not
fine.
my specialty.
Yeah, that's
we had a question.
I had a question.
Yeah.
So you're talking a lot about information. Google's mission is to organize the world's information. Right?
No, it's not.
Work for Google, but that's what they say they want to do. I guess my question is do you think that looking back in hindsight 2020, that if publishers had thought of themselves as information companies rather than news companies or, God forbid, tech companies, like at some point they tried to tell themselves they were, do you think the outcome would have been different?
All right, Steph, you want to go first?
If you thought of yourself as an information company.
So I think that my very truthful answer is that a lot of news companies saw themselves as newspaper companies.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? Not as, like, I think it's
News
very
information companies.
I think it's very different today.
Yeah.
Right? If you would talk to, I think it has changed over the course of the last 10 years for news companies to be like, I am an information company, I am a news company, and I will be where the eyeballs and where the people are, and I will deliver them the information that they need to know.
Yeah.
I think at the point in which Google entered, especially into like DFP, like I was at a publisher at that moment in time, and I can tell you they thought, we're a newspaper company.
But
This is how
TV
people
companies, like if you look at what
It's the same.
newspapers, like websites are newspapers digital, then we're taking TV clips and put them in.
It is
9 boxes.
wild how much I see what has happened from print to digital, not replicating itself, like sort of just like morphing itself a little bit differently in the linear to digital or broadcast to digital realm, right? Because
Thank you, sir.
Cheers.
they definitely are more skeptical. Right? They try to control their ad decisioning better than, because they saw what happened in display advertising, they saw what happened in news. And so a lot of them invest in their own advertising technology. So they have taken on building their own ad serving. They've taken on working with independent ad servers that are not associated with large ad demand businesses. And they're more skeptical about the technology companies that they work with and using programmatic pipes and how they use programmatic pipes than we were, because we were first, right? The print companies were first, and it's almost like these broadcast companies are looking at this like, somebody who works at Warner Brothers Discovery said to me one time, I saw what happened in this display and that is fucked up. So I wanted to make sure that wasn't going to happen to our business, which is why we picked X, Y, and Z for our partners.
Do you think they still make as much money doing that? Because they have the scale.
So developing your own advertising technology is an investment, right? But when you think about it, it's how you make money, right? It's like, this is like the main mechanism in which you make money. And so being able to control and have that transparency is incredibly important. So, and it feeds into being a digital first business, right? So like I talked earlier a little bit about who has the best advertising experiences. It tends to be people who build their own ad platforms. And part of that is because they're merging their customer data in with the advertising experience data. And the only way that you can do that is by controlling how that ad decisioning mechanism works and feeding it into your customer data. And even from a very simplistic view, just having a general understanding of this is a person with a high advertising value, this is a person with a low advertising value, this is a person with a high propensity to subscribe or a low propensity to subscribe, this is a person who's in market for a car or a house or whatever. Right now, I need to make sure I'm monetizing them in this way. It is that information that makes it incredibly important. And I will also say that in realm of of seeing themselves as newspapers or seeing themselves versus seeing themselves as information companies, is that there is also this transitioning that's happening right now where we need to see ourselves as brands, right? We need to stand for something. It's not about scale anymore, right? It's about the connection point that you have with a user. Because the programmatic ecosystem really let data just kind of free flow throughout the open internet. And when it free flow, the problem with, you have a Wall Street Journal monetizing at the same rate is because this free flow of data. The cookie going away, IP address being obfuscated, all of these different signals being taken away means that all of a sudden that relationship with the user is coming back to us. So we need to start behaving like D2C brands.
Yeah.
Right? And we need to start controlling our customer data, controlling our ad decisioning, controlling the way that people see our inventory, and being able to make sure that we're selective and judicious about what partners we bring into our ecosystem to make sure that we always have control, right?
I guess part of the subtext of my question is that the reason I say information company and would we have been better thinking about ourselves as information companies is that I wonder if it would have spurred more innovation. Right?
Yes.
And I think that's what worries me, to go to your point about AI. I worry that as publishers, we'll just do the content distribution deal and move on.
All right.
Right?
So
I'm worried about the innovation aspect. I feel like we're at a point where there's a reset. I think that's what you're hinting at too.
I'm not. That wasn't a hint. Just to be clear, I don't know if you thought that was a hint.
Broad headline.
Yeah.
But what if we don't harness the innovation?
All right.
How do we harness the innovation if we still think of ourselves as legacy publishers, but now just offer it in digital?
All right. So.
Wait, can
Go
I
on.
get in? Can I get in for a second? Sorry, Rochelle, CTO, New York Post.
How you doing?
Good.
Welcome.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's great to see you.
5 drinks in.
Fantastic. But now we're going to hear the truth.
I
We're going to hear the
started
truth
feeling-
now because of
I
that.
started
Yeah.
I didn't eat enough to have a second drink.
Yes, I'm amazed how many drinks are happening here.
We're leading the charge over here. You're welcome.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna keep up, right?
Cheers.
So Stephanie just said something about, it's my biggest, I have been so many meetings today about just monetization. And every meeting I was in was how we talk to external partners about how we should better monetize. Drives me fucking crazy. Right? I'm let me talk to somebody else about the most important thing to me. Right?
Yeah.
When the most important thing to me is what I should control.
This is the embers burning, right? This is
Right?
it. This is the start.
Yeah, and that's my feeling. I'm how did I give my destiny to somebody else to control?
Yeah.
I need to take that back.
You too.
So AI is actually, I think we think about
Thank
it
you.
a lot of the time as a risk, right? Because of the distribution aspects of AI, and is traffic ever going to come back to my site? And are people going to have this very loyal relationship with me? But I also see it as a massive opportunity, and this is why, right? So in the ad tech ecosystem, there has been multiple different intermediaries, some in which provide significant value, and some of which pedal on obfuscation and on non-transparency and being able to take non-transparent margins throughout the ad tech chain, right? And so I started to think to myself, like, well, we used to sell directly, right? We used to have agencies, and we went out and we pitched ComScore numbers to them, and we were like, hey, I over-index in people who like to buy shoes.
You all know it.
Like
You all know
a
it,
shoe
right?
ad from
Yeah.
my website, right? And so, and that's how we used to sell. But that's not scalable. And the reason why everybody moved to programmatic ad platforms was because it wasn't scalable, and I couldn't reach the 1,000 different publishers that exist in the ecosystem. I couldn't negotiate with each of them individually, right? And so I've been talking a little bit with folks about what does the negotiation look like between publishers and buyers in the future? And it's what if, we're talking about agents, right? What if these agents negotiated with each other, right? What if we didn't just, what if in our agents we had our customer data and we had our, on the brand side, right? They might have their customer data and they might have their return on ad spend goals. They might have the outcomes that they're trying to achieve, and they might have their brand creative guidelines and things, and that's all uploaded into their agent. Their agent knows it. It's authoritative, etc. Right? And then maybe the seller has their customer data uploaded into it. Maybe they have their products that they're selling uploaded, and their availability and how much of it. And they might have all of the measurement partners that they're working on. And then you actually had these agents negotiate with each other. And if these agents negotiated with each other, right, that's a direct deal, right? But what if you could do the direct deal at scale with agents, right? So I started to think to myself, oh, maybe the actual technology ad tech doesn't exist in the middle anymore. It exists on the ends. Right? And it exists within these kind of agents that start to negotiate with each other. And so when I think about what are we doing to get ourselves closer to that is trying to use AI to make the entire workflow faster for monetization, right? It's okay, I want to sell as much direct as possible, right? We're seeing the signal loss mean that direct advertising is more important, that private deals are more important. How can I make sure that I'm using AI so that I can set up more deals? How can I make sure I'm making the Excel process easier? How can I make sure I'm connecting with Prisma, Prisma's API to my own systems so that I'm actually scaling myself, right, from a direct monetization perspective and getting closer to this idea of actual
real-time
agentic negotiations that could possibly happen.
Yeah, you like that idea, right? Yeah, I thought you might. Yeah.
Why do you think Google developed an agent protocol?
I know. And listen, I'm skeptical because I fundamentally believe that our customer data is our biggest asset, that our unique content is our greatest asset. And so the only thing that I can say in this realm of us navigating AI and figuring out how we're going to interact and how we're not going to interact is pay attention to who wants to be a co-controller of your data. Pay attention to who wants to, hey, I could just put a little JavaScript on your page, it's cool, right? Right? Pay attention to where your data goes and who it goes to, right? Because we got fucked once and we can't let it happen again, right? And we've got an opportunity right now. And AI is going to change everything. I think even without the 1, 2, 3 loss of Google, I think AI was going to challenge it, right? And I think OpenAI was going to challenge it. I think Perplexity and all of these different discovery mechanisms. But don't undersell the power of your content. Don't undersell the power of how you engage users and how you engage consumers. And don't undersell what you provide to the market, right? And just take control again.
Hallelujah. That was a manifesto for our future. Okay, so you remember I started by saying heroin over here, yeah?
This is embarrassing.
That was it, right? So we need leaders to fight the future. So not only has Steph stood up to fight the loss that we had to turn it into a win, she's got ideas about what the win is, how we win the peace. Okay? I heard you loud. And that rage that you're feeling is being felt by lots of others, but probably earlier. You're feeling it first, but it's going to rise through all of us, right? So I do want to talk about something. I want to talk about the remedies that's happening at the moment. So Google's going to end. There's going to be an end of Google, a change. Good stuff's coming up. Go for it. Jog it out. So something happened yesterday. I'm talking to you, actually. I'm talking to you just quickly. This happened yesterday. Yes. No, Friday. So one of the questions I get asked all the time, I'm at the very end of a 4-week global tour, talking to publishers all over the world, 4 different continents. And everybody asks me the same question. The question is, yeah, look, but this is going to take forever. Google's going to appeal. It's got so much money. It's going to have 900 lawyers, 9,000 lawyers. It's going to drag this out for 10 years. They actually said 10 years in the court case.
I just want to be really clear that people also were like, they're never going to, no judge
is ever
going to understand
That's
ad tech.
never going to happen.
We taught an 80-year-old woman about ad tech.
Come on.
And she fucking crushed it.
She did crush
it. Guys, I can't even tell you how brilliant this woman was. And also in the line of questioning, there was all different kinds of stuff where they were coming at me, and she would be like, stop.
Stop.
And she would be like, explain yourself. And then I would explain myself, and she was like, okay, moving on.
And then Google put up 6 other witnesses, and she just went, no, lunchtime.
The coolest person.
It was just the best, wasn't it? And Judge Brinkema, her name is, Leonie Brinkema. And so the thing to know about Leonie Brinkema was that when she was selected, I went and did a big deep dive into who she was, right? And she is a badass, a world-class badass. Yeah. So she did the only ever prosecution of a Al-Qaeda terrorist, right? But then, when she then dealt with that, and he was clearly mad because he'd been tortured in various ways, she then went after the CIA to identify all the black sites offshore. And she did it in her own time. And she just went, that's bad, and you're fucked. And she nailed it, didn't she?
Cool.
And she just sits there, and she's she's got this kind of comb over.
She's terrifying. I love it.
And she's so smart.
So smart.
Right? And she's got gravity.
So cool.
Literally pens shake on the desk in front of her. She's so smart. It's amazing.
Yes.
So yes, okay, I totally agree.
Sorry.
Where were we? You've
I don't
lost
know.
me now.
I lost you.
Me. Yeah.
Sorry.
Great opinion here. A different opinion here.
Yes.
May I offer a hot take? And I'm happy to pack my bags after this.
I love.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Here we go. Yeah. You have to pay for the cocktails if you. Okay, go.
So, can I give a different side of the problem from my vantage point as someone who is? I thought I considered myself a technologist and a product person, but I spent almost 8 years with newsrooms as a technologist and as somebody who has heard their pains. I'm losing count of how many technology transformations, that word is very loose right now. The amount of technology transformations I'm undergoing in my role right now with the newsroom, I've spent, and I felt like I've burned through what their pain is. I've spent 24-hour shifts as we're trying to publish stories and moving off systems. I've been on the late night watch, so I feel like I've stood by their side and really held their hand through a lot of that. From my vantage point, the hardest part is bringing them on that journey. We've talked a lot about technology tonight, and for me, the technology is the easiest part of my job. But the hours that I spend in the newsroom, walking through the change and how this will change their lives and how it will make it easier. What hurts me the most, actually somebody on Eric Shell's team, and I talk about him all the time, spends his free time moving files because their systems are just, at a point where they're moving so fast as an organization, they're publishing so many things, but their systems can't keep up with them.
Wait,
But
who's
they're
that? Okay.
we love Steve. So, but they're terrified of change because it's working the way that it is. It might not be the best, but I have to spend hours with them saying, I promise you I know it's gonna hurt. It's gonna be super painful, and let me tell you, I need hours of your time so we can walk through this change. But I find that technology is not the problem because we can switch them out tomorrow. But taking them on that journey and spending hours with that team walking through the benefits and how best to do it for them, I truly feel that sometimes maybe that is the part that's really hurting us. And that's a really hot take to say, because I couldn't agree more with a lot of what you've said tonight, to be honest. But I struggle with the fact that it's really hard sometimes to take journalists on the journey with us on how fast we can go.
And I will second that and say that that's not a hot take, that's actually reality.
Yes.
That's
And
totally a
I
reality.
think we're all going to agree in the room that that is the reality. Do we all accept that? Has anybody got a fundamental disbelief for that?
Nobody thinks
it's really hard to
Girl,
say
nobody
that.
thinks that's a hot take. Everybody's like, yeah.
Because we
This-
haven't said it tonight, right? So
No. But
Well,
like,
we have to.
I just want to be very clear. I now work at a technology company,
Yeah.
right? And getting adoption of AI tools and having people use them can be hard. It can absolutely be hard. And these are people who are natively used to tech,
Yeah.
right? And I
Have you asked the newsroom to do AI
Listen,
ranking of a homepage?
I mean, that's like a whole thing.
this is not to challenge the status quo. It's
No.
to how
By the
we
way,
start there.
this is a safe place. This is where we have this conversation.
Well, it's a
Okay.
safe place that's being recorded. But I also. Okay, womp womp. No, I
Is
will.
it true though, right? Is it
no.
true?
I will.
We get it.
Yeah. Okay. So I will say that what I found works the most, because I think there is this overarching fear that AI just takes all of our jobs, right? It just takes all of our jobs, right? And I think it is more powerful when we talk them through, how can this make your existing job so much easier, right? Right?
Yeah.
So like, I think to myself, like, my original thoughts on advertising technology and how AI changes things and what our strategy should be and ad serving and blah, 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 all that kind of stuff like that. That is something that I'm able to spend higher level thoughts doing, right? If I can make all the manual bullshit go away and use AI for that, that's the narrative we have to make sure our newsrooms are hearing, right? Which is like, you're still you. We still need you, right? But let's figure out a way to organize your thoughts. Let's figure out a way to scale the things that you already do. Let's figure out a way to take off some of the manual bullshit that you've always had to do and maybe make it just a little bit faster, maybe make it a little bit more efficient. But change management, man, is like, as fast as everything's running from a technology perspective, change management for me has always been just a little bit at a time, every single day.
I want to
Right.
be really clear on what you say about figuring out and removing these manual work from journalists. And
Yeah.
so, what do you advise today of executives here? Either build, rent, or buy.
Yeah.
What would be the best approach?
I think it heavily depends on what exists already in market and if it's going to meet your use cases or meet your needs. We have kind of a vision of like the things that you build, the things that like you build the things that don't already exist in market, right? That are revolutionary and personally fit to your business, right? But if it's something that's like a simple kind of like workflow automation, that's something that you would buy, right? But your core data foundations is actually what I always suggest people invest in, because the ownership there's like this trend of composability that's happening now with technology, right? Where you can actually start to be like, okay, I have created my data lake. It sits on AWS, it sits on Databricks, it sits on Snowflake, and I can use these applications that translate that data into something my business users can use. That is like the most attractive trend for me in like just publishing in general right now, is this idea that like I own the underlying workflow, but I have just like these things that help me are almost applications that sit on top of it.
All right, so we're running out of time. So I'm going to answer your question with a slightly different take.
Okay.
So all of those things are absolutely correct. But we're the publishing industry. We have existed for hundreds of years. We tell stories that no one else can tell. We reveal truths that no one else will tell. And we fucking matter. Okay? We do. So maybe what we do as an industry is that individually we're ants fighting elephants. And we've been fighting this forever. But collectively, we're the bigger elephant. If we can find a way to work collectively, we can create something enormous. And maybe what we do is we don't build it. Yeah, we don't buy it. Maybe we king make it. And we decide who's going to win. And we do it collectively. Because what we do is enormously important and enormously powerful. And for the first time in 25 years, we have a voice and an opportunity. So don't be afraid. Don't say no. Don't take it to the board. Don't have 5 million page meetings and reasons not to do it. Just do it. Okay? And then we'll go forward. That's what you say. Let's do that. All right. Thank you so much. We want to talk more, but we're going to run out of time. Thank you.
Amazing, thank you. Continue the conversation. We'd love for you guys to stick around. This is going to just spawn so many things. So let's hang out if you can hang out. If you need to leave, no problem. Thank you so much to Ricky. Thank you so much to Steph. A round of applause for them.
Thanks. And thank you to Wiseline.
Thank you from Wiseline. We've worked with many of you before. We can't wait to work with the rest of you. And so it's awesome to have you all here. Thank you so much.
Amazing.
Thank you. We did it.